hello, BookTube. All right, we're continuing with my 12.3K Q&A. We're at part 2 now, and we're starting with Olive McQueen, who has a gigantic essay to read. Let's see here. Congratulations on 12.3K. I think that the way your channel is going, these Q&As will be a weekly event. I think it's likely there'll be one next week. I have been watching your videos daily and have even gone back and watched older videos, which I have really enjoyed. Thank you. I have to say that I find the 10 best books articles on your website to be particularly interesting. I am asking you one question today, and I am asking it because I feel, considering that you have been around 28 years, you may have some wisdom that could be passed down. I am a 35-year-old lawyer who is currently in a job that doesn't interest me. I have no real hobbies apart from reading and watching TV. I get very sad and melancholy all the time for no apparent reason. Well, I can tell you the reason. It's not no apparent reason. The reason is quite apparent. It's because you're consuming without producing. You're absorbing without creating. That's what's causing that feeling. But anyway, you go on here. Lately, I feel that I am wasting my life, that I am not achieving anything substantial with the time I have been given. I don't create anything. Okay, you said it yourself. I don't create anything. I move paper and email for a living. It has recently hit me that we all have a very limited time on this planet. With that in mind, as you are a very wise man, I would like to ask, in your experience, what tips or advice you have for people in their 30s who feel a little lost, or people generally who feel they are letting life pass them by. I know this is a complicated question, and I'm sorry for taking up your time, but I like the fact that you do answer all questions put to you. Well, it is too big a question for just a quick answer, but I can give a quick answer. The quick answer is twofold. Actually, it boils down to one word, and the one word is also located rather prominently by a major character in the New Testament, and that one word is give. Give. Don't just take. Give. Now, I won't go so far as the author of that word in the New Testament did, which was give to everyone who asks of you, but I would say give. In other words, don't just absorb reading material, write something. Don't just absorb the creative efforts of other people, make efforts yourself. Volunteer your time at some cause that means something to you. Things like that. You've got to participate. It sounds to me like the reason why you're feeling melancholy all the time is because you're not participating in the only life you get. In no time at all, you're going to be old. And you're going to look back on that time. You're never getting it back, and you're never getting any more time. This is not any, as an old friend of mine used to say, this is not a dress rehearsal. It's the one and only chance that the biochemicals that make you who you are will combine into being you. After that, no. After that, never again. This is it. This is all. And so far in your life, you probably are underestimating how valuable you are as a worker, but you're not making anything, and that's what's bothering you. You should correct that right away. Figure out what it is that you want to make and take steps towards doing it. Figure out how you want to make an impact on other people, how you want to reach out and affect the world instead of just having the world affect you. I'm happy to email you on the subject. Let's see here. Ingrid Fritz says, you have told us a little bit about your world travels and adventures over the years. Have you ever considered writing a travel memoir? I think we'd all like to read about your experiences. I have, yes. Any memoir that I would write would necessarily be a travel memoir. I just haven't done it, that's all. Jordan Parsons says, I'm still reeling from my read of McCullough's History of Christianity, which was certainly my favorite read of 2021. An amazing book. Amazing. It's huge, but it's amazing. There's something, you can feel your perceptions being broadened on literally every page. Do you know any good books specifically on Orthodox Christianity? I haven't read all that many. I read the Oxford Companion, but that was a collection of essays, and it got fairly in the weeds. But Timothy Ware wrote a book years ago. I don't know if it's still in print. He wrote a book, a history of Orthodox Christianity, that I thought was really good. I don't know how available it is, but I can recommend it. Dr. Bacon says, hello to Bean and Steve, I suppose. Yes, the Bean is the star of the show. Let's see here. 2 questions. Number 1, how do you feel about The Buried Giant by Ishiguro? I'm working my way through it now and find it to be a real slog. Yes, indeed, it is a real slog. It's my first novel of his, so I wonder what I'm in for and how he nabbed that Pulitzer. I don't understand awards. I don't understand what happens to them, but Buried Giant is a slog. It's not going to get any better, I guess, is my point for you. And number 2, how do you feel about the works of Haruki Murakami? Mostly the same way. Every once in a while, there'll be something in one of his books that I like. But if you're feeling this way about Ishiguro, it's entirely possible that you will read Murakami and say, what is the fuss about? It's entirely possible that will happen. You should prepare yourself for it. Philip Coghill says, what is your favorite non-traditional adaptation of a Shakespeare play? Would have to be Romeo plus Juliet by Baz Luhrmann. What a movie. What a movie that is. But is that what you meant? As in something like West Side Story or The Throne of Blood, that is based on one of his plays, but that doesn't use his original dialogue. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. There are so many that make those claims. I think there's so much just to absorb of the non-traditional versions of Winter's Tale or Love's Labour's Lost or anything. I mean, a traditional version can be done magnificently as well, but the ones that make the claim and are based on it, oh God, I don't know how many there are. I'd have to research it. I'm a bit of a Philistine, I would imagine, because the first thing that's coming to mind still uses Shakespeare's words. But it's Harold Hecuba. It's the great Phil Silvers doing a guest appearance on Gilligan's Island as an imperious Broadway producer who finally decides, as all Broadway directors have been tempted along these lines, because they're all hysterical egomaniacs. He's so frustrated by the thespian limitations of the castaways that he eventually decides what every Broadway director has always been tempted to do, to just do all the parts of Hamlet himself. until it physically exhausts him. But he still uses Shakespeare's dialogue, so that won't work. Let's see here. Nassar says, number one, what do you think of Haruki Murakami? Same thing. He can be a bit of a slog. Finding the genius is hard, which means a lot. That means a lot. And where should one start with his novels? It isn't going to matter. I don't think it's going to matter. Start with Kafka on the Shore. Start with something that is strong and that was edited, but the flaws, the challenges, let's say, are present in all of his works. So you either like it or you won't. And in the same vein about Mishima, well, Mishima is a much better writer. I would start anywhere. Just pick whatever book your library has. His talent is fairly evenly sown throughout his works. So if you read one, you're going to like it. If you like one, you're going to like the rest. Number two, which, according to you, is the best novel of Iris Murdoch? Well, Iris Murdoch is, right now, I would say The Sea, as I imagine a lot of people would. But Iris Murdoch is on my list. I have a sort of a slowly rotating list of authors that I intend to reconsider. Usually 20th century authors. And Iris Murdoch is on that list. Right now, I consider her novels to be turgid failures. Almost all of them to be turgid, overwritten failures. But that opinion was based on a read-through of all of her work that's now a few decades old. So she's on a list to reconsider. So I might have a completely different opinion in very little time. And then number three is, who do you think is a better short story writer, Fitzgerald or Hemingway? Ooh, well, they're writing completely different kinds of short stories, right? And under completely different circumstances. I would say if you said not so much subject matter, but that you have X amount of time, 10 days, to write a short story for publication, for which I would give you $3,500. And it has to be X amount of words long. If you were to do that for both of them and set the starting pistol off, then I think it would be Fitzgerald, absolutely, who would write a better story under those circumstances. But they're totally different kinds of short stories. I'm not sure that you could compare them. My favorite is Fitzgerald, but again, that varies. Beatrice Mendes says, let's see here. What's your view on Mario Vargas Llosa's work? I love it. What did you think of The Feast of the Goat? I loved it. Do you recommend his nonfiction, in particular A Fish in the Water and the essays in Touchstones? I do. He's a rare example of someone whose fiction I like better than his nonfiction, but I like everything he's written that I've read. Foothill Element says, I have just received an uncorrected proof copy of Volume 1 of Saul Bellow Biography by Zachary Leader. It's years old. Did you buy the uncorrected proof? Interesting. The book is described as having marginal marks and notes by a well-known literary critic and book reviewer. The book came from Massachusetts, so they must be referring to you. Is this the best Saul Bellow biography available? Well, It is the best Saul Bellow biography available. As to whether or not they're referring to me, I don't know. There are two other well-known book critics in Massachusetts, and I'm not sure how well-known I am. I think it'd be fairly easy for you to tell if the annotations were by me, since I don't like Bellow, and since I don't like Zachary Leader's many attempts to sort of soften how odious he was. If that's the gist of the commentary in there, then that might be me. Also, if one of my critical brethren, I don't think he lives in Massachusetts anymore, insists on writing all of his margin notes in multiple colors of ink. So you'd know that it wasn't me if it was that. Another one, again, I don't think he lives in Massachusetts anymore, writes his underlining and margin notes in pen, in ink, which is that's the first thing you'd know if it's me, is that they'll be in pencil. So I don't understand this habit by book critics to annotate their books in pen. I just don't understand that at all. It's so rude. But anyway, let's see here. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're fine. Okay. Nicole F. says, hello, Steve. Thanks for spending time with us, imaginary booktube friends, during these times. A brief detour. Wait, we have to retire that, right? We have to retire that in impossibly vague, in these times, that became vogue when the pandemic started. We have to retire that, right? Because the pandemic is lifting in a lot of places in the world, and war has displaced it in the headlines anyway, and we can't, it's just so annoyingly vague of a fad. The same thing with, hope you're doing well. Just the most bloated Colonel Blimp kind of nicety. I hope you're doing well. Don't hope anything. Don't involve how I'm doing in our business correspondence. Just don't do it. Oh, and the same thing within these times. I got so sick of getting form emails from publicists saying, "Hope you're doing well in these times." It's always these times. We went from pestilence to war, so you need to retire that. But anyway, a brief detour before my question. Well, naturally, we wouldn't want brevity, now would we? I recently begun reading Vanity Fair, and my ebook copy tells me I have 12,300 pages in this book. My brief Google search tells me the book usually has about 800 pages. Yes. Does the ebook have differing page counts often happen? Yeah. Yeah, you can't trust the ebook fair. Vanity Fair doesn't have 12,000 pages. I wish it did, but it doesn't. No. Jimmy Kirkham says, hey, Steve, congrats. Thanks for all the great recommendations. What is a good book on the Vietnam War? Did you protest the Vietnam War? A good book on the Vietnam. I have taken to recommending Max Hastings' book on Vietnam. It's a good one-volume book, although the war is, like many other subjects, really big. If it really interests you, I would suggest not spending much time with a one-volume general book. Instead, find out what parts of it interest you and dig into those. The whole thing will come to you in time, but that's a more enjoyable way to do it. And did I protest the Vietnam War? The simple answer is no. Mr. Morningstar says, how do you feel about the gimmick in the Tristano novel? It has 10 chapters, and the 15 pairs of paragraphs in each are shuffled anew for each published copy. No two are the same. Does this enrage you or warm the cockles of your heart? What do you think? What do you think it does? Of those two, even if you watched only one video of mine, which of those alternatives do you think is true? Matt Sheridan says, congrats on 12.3. Pretty soon it'll be 13K, then 15K, and so on. You can't escape your destiny. Sure I can. I would say if I just make sure to make my content even more tedious, then it won't then my subscriber count won't keep growing. But realistically speaking, how much more tedious could it be? Question number 1. Being a comic book fan, what are your thoughts on the works of Harvey Pekar? I don't like him. I'm sorry. I know that lots of people do, but I don't. Number 2, what are your thoughts on the theories that John Wilkes Booth escaped? Wait, are we still talking about comics? No, John Wilkes Booth did not escape. Dude, what on earth? He did not escape. I've never understood the fringe element that says that. No, he did not escape. There are all sorts of servicemen that saw his body. No. It's not a theory. It never occurred to me. It's a wild... Anyway. And number 3, we've heard you talk many times about the assassination of President Kennedy. Yes, although don't capitalize assassination. Right? Donald Trump is not in power, so we don't just randomly capitalize words. What are your thoughts on the killing of Bobby and the conspiracy theories that surround it? Here there's a lot more to say. John Wilkes Booth surviving. That's just absurd. People saw him die. Servicemen who would have to be in on it saw him die. But Bobby Kennedy is a different thing. It's a complex subject, far more complex than it seems. I had an old friend who studied it rather extensively and found a whole bunch of things. I always talk, when I talk about conspiracy theories, about whether or not there's a hook. When you're looking through it and you're thinking, okay, tinfoil hat, tinfoil hat, tinfoil hat, and then you see one detail that says, oh, wait, okay, that's verifiably, objectively strange. When you encounter that kind of a hook, then you know there's at least something, that it's not, you're not just being a fruitcake to examine the subject. And there are a few really noticeable problems with the official story of the RFK assassination. So I definitely read up on it. Read Shadow Play. A book called Shadow Play is terrific. It was just recently reissued, so it'll be a really good introduction to the subject. But it's not crazy to think there was more going on there. Let's just put it that way. Andrew Russell says, "Hi, Steve, and congrats on the continued explosive growth of your channel. I'm shortly hoping to direct a short one-act play for my amateur drama group. Oh, what fun. I've done that so many times. Which will force me to confront and overcome several personal fears and insecurities. What is the greatest fear or insecurity you have faced, and how did you overcome it in the end? P.S. Sorry for the rambling question. Please be gentle with me." This wasn't a rambling question by the standards of my Q&As. It was concise. But I'm afraid I can't help you with personal fears and insecurities. I'm afraid I can't help you with that. I really don't do personal fears and insecurities. I know that in the 21st century, where everyone is medicated all the time, and where everyone is wounded all the time, where everyone loves their wounded narrative all the time, that seems just flat out bizarre. That someone would say that someone would say, I don't really do personal fears and insecurities. That someone would say that seems utterly bizarre. It seems like the vainest, most bragging thing anyone could possibly say. But that's only because of the debased times in which we live. That's all. That's all. That's the only reason why that isn't a fairly normal response. I can't help you with personal fears and insecurities. Doubting whether or not I can manage to do something, doubting whether or not something is within my capacity, at my present state of learning about that something, sure. But insecurities, anxiety, I think, is the universal blanket term. I don't do it. Oh, wait, no, but Isaiah Armstrong jumps in. I can't help but reply to this. Very dangerous. Is he going to say something that I don't agree with? Let's see. He's putting his head on the chopping block. Let's see. I can't help but reply to this. You can absolutely do it. Objectively, you must have the ability to do it, or else you would never put yourself in that situation, which means your only hindrance is the mind. I think the key is to have confidence in your abilities regardless of what others think. If you know you can do a good job and what's other people's negative judgment in the end, that is much more their own problem than yours. To overcome that is easier said than done, but it is very much possible and very much worth it. All right, well, in this case, he escapes damnation because I largely agree. I have directed plays, and it is tremendous, tremendous fun. The one piece of advice that I would give you, I'm sure that you can do it. The one piece of advice that I would give you is that in any group of actors are mostly fairly docile, biddable creatures, much like sheep in a field. But every once in a while, in every crew of actors, in every troupe, you'll get one person who's a frustrated director. Maybe more than one. Oftentimes, horrifically, it's the star. It's your big person. And when that happens, and if you keep directing long enough, it certainly will. The key piece of advice I'd remember, directing is very collaborative. If you do it well, it's a very collaborative thing. You're talking with your actors. You're listening to them even when they don't think you're listening. You're assessing what they can and cannot do. What kind of directing? It's actually not just one kind of directing. You're directing each person. And you're feeling that out as you go along, and it's very cooperative. Actors come to rely on that from good directors. They want that guiding hand. Every once in a while, you'll have someone in the troupe who isn't like that, who thinks they should be calling the shots. And the one piece of advice I would give is that when it comes to it, the whole point of you being the director is to say, my way or the highway, to that person in that circumstance. Terribly wrong to say it just in general, or to say it out of the gate, as I've had some tin pot directors do. But when it comes to it, you have to remember that collaboration has its limit. That collaboration should definitely be the way you do it. That's the way you'll get a great performance out of a crew of people who are amateurs, after all. But when someone wants to do your job instead of you, you have to draw the line, even if it means getting rid of them, even if it means that this won't work, right? So be gentle and be patient. But it has happened to me. It might happen to you. It is perfectly acceptable to say to someone, take someone aside and say, look, this is the third time. First time I was willing to let it go. Second time I was willing to let it go. This is the third time you're trying to direct this play. And it's the last time. If you try to do this again, you'll find out how quick we can do without you. Are we clear on that? There might come a point when you have to say that, and you just have to recognize that that's the case. But otherwise, collaboration is the way to go. It's a team effort to direct something, I think. But anyway, Nick Piccarilli says, number one, are we going to reach a stage now where people are adding their own answers to my Q&As? We'll never end them. It'll be 10 parts each if we do that. Let's hope Isaiah Armstrong was an outlier. Nick Piccarilli says, number one, are the sequels to Pillars of the Earth worth reading? Yes. Number two, with the new Batman movie coming out, who do you think has been the best actor in the role? Well, okay. The new movie's out now to largely positive reviews, but the best actor in the role won't necessarily be the best Batman, right? The best actor, just in terms of acting ability, not as Batman, but just the best actor to play Batman was Val Kilmer. But he's widely derided as Batman. He's widely derided, maybe rightly so. I don't know. I think that movie has some really effective moments in it. So it doesn't really matter who's the best actor. Like, for instance, Robert Pattinson is the newest Batman. And he is, I think, a very talented actor. I myself I'll hold an opinion that's obviously going to be in the minority, that he is just plain ridiculous as Batman. It's just plain ridiculous. On a deep, fundamental level, I was giggling through the whole thing. So it's two questions: the quality of the acting and the ability of the person to be the part. And I don't know that they're the same. If I'm pursuing that opens the question of, well, who would I cast as Batman? And that's pretty fascinating. That's a pretty fascinating question. I have a whole bunch of possibilities that I could do for that. I think probably of the young-ish actors that are out there today, the one who would do the best job would probably be Tom Hardy. But then you see right away what the aesthetic that I would be going for. Robert Pattinson is very much a boy Batman. And there's no way to avoid that. I don't think there's any way to avoid that. I guess the fanboys who've been watching the movie and liking it aren't seeing that. So good for them. How are we doing for time? All right, we're fine. Let's see here. Ryan Mahoki says, addition to my last question, have we had a question from you yet? If it's not too late, have you ever watched any Wes Anderson films? Yes, I've watched them all. If so, which one? I've watched them all. And what do you think of them? They're good. They're gimmicky. They're not for me. They're so arch that they're very much meant to blunt the gut reaction to a movie. Right? I am of the old school opinion that a movie should very quickly convince you that it's not a movie, and that you're experiencing it, so that it's directly manipulating your emotions. Wes Anderson doesn't do that. He's obviously intent on doing the exact opposite of that, like Quentin Tarantino. So I don't know. Your mileage may vary, as they say. Jenny Park says, "Hi, Steve and Frida. Which book were you most or least excited to have reviewed ever? Ever? Do you have any idea how many books I reviewed? I have no idea. There is no way that I could narrow down to one out of what is probably 5,000. There's no way that I could do that. Let's just go on to your next question. What is your opinion of James Herbert? He was said to be the British Stephen King, but I've always found his books much more entertaining. They're much more entertaining because they're much better. They're more solidly put together. They're more eloquently written. Yeah, he's very, very good. I think it's wrong to even compare him to Stephen King. Let's see here. Lisa Garrity says, have you considered creating a Western starter kit? Not Western civilization, but Western. Zane Grey, Elmore Leonard, Larry McMurtry. I have indeed. And such a thing will be coming your way, partner, in June. When I am, Michael K. Vaughan idly mentioned that he might want to do an event called June on the Range. where we read Westerns in the month of June. And now I'm holding him to it, and I don't care how busy he is or whether or not he's not inclined to do it anymore. I'm drafting him into his own event. And I will do a starter kit for Westerns then. Although I imagine it'll be pretty predictable. I think probably you could guess, and accurately guess, probably 6 out of 10 that would be on that list. How are we doing? We're fine. All right. Chris Bianchi has a barrage of questions. Number 1, do you have a favorite play by Harold Pinter? No. Number 2, what are your thoughts on Death in Venice by Thomas Mann? I enjoyed the movie adaptation more. Well, I tend to agree. Yeah, I tend to agree. In most cases, a movie adaptation is better than the book. What I wouldn't give for a new Death in Venice, a new sumptuous Death in Venice that looks straight at the subject. I could even cast it, but Hollywood would never do it. And number 3, did you enjoy the 1964 Beckett movie? Your favorite film was The Lion in Winter, but is Beckett in your top 10? Yes, Beckett is in my top 10. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love the fact that Peter O'Toole is playing the same character, only 10 years difference in time, and he acted in the movies in 10 years difference in time. I don't know of a parallel to that. One thing for someone to play, for George C. Scott to play Patton at 2 different times. He did a disastrous sequel to the glorious movie Patton. But for the same amount of time to have passed between the two different iterations of the character, both in real life and in the action of the story, I don't know many examples like that. I absolutely love the movie Beckett. Absolutely love it. Just love it. There are some moments in there. There are moments, big hammy moments in there that are clearly meant to work on me. But there are smaller moments that definitely do. Definitely do. Oh my! The moment when Henry is just tormented at the end of the movie, towards the end of the movie, after he's broken with Beckett, after he's done all that he can to ruin Beckett, and he's in a tiny little cloister, and Peter O'Toole does such a great job of showing his agony that one of the priests that he hates so much says to him, "You still love him, don't you?" It's such a charged moment. Of course, the most dramatic difference between the two, Lion in Winter and Beckett, is Eleanor of Aquitaine, who in Beckett is this plump, knitting, spiteful biddy bean, and in The Lion in Winter, she's gloriously reimagined and done by Katharine Hepburn. Anyway. We'll do one more here. We'll do Arthur Odell has, let's see here. I'm rereading some Dick Francis from March Mystery Madness, and I'd like to know what you think of his work. Also, what do you think of his son Felix Francis as well? I like them both. I'm not a huge fan of Dick Francis. I read, his books seem very formulaic to me. I'm not 100% sure if I might like them better if I didn't detest the world that they're set in, since horses don't run around a track voluntarily. It's a horrifying world, a horrifying world built on brutality and torture. I'm not sure. Maybe I would feel different if his novels were all set in the world of antique book collecting. I might like him a lot better. But we're gonna wrap up there and go on to part 3